here today with the incredible Lucrezia. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
And we are here to talk about all things legal for your blog and for your business, because this is one of those areas that, like, we start our blogs and we just throw caution to the wind, and then somebody says, like, oh, I got the big S word, I got sued, or like they got into some kind of trouble, and then suddenly it's like a panic of like running around chasing, like, what do I need to protect myself? So let's prevent that from happening.
So let me state this. This is a disclaimer. So before we start and we go, we dive into all the legal things that we will address today, I just want to make sure that we all know that today is just, this chat doesn't constitute legal advice. So even if I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyers here today. Yes, all the information, all the tips that I will share with you today, just for educational purposes only. So I don't know, you can go on my website, you can read my full disclaimer so that we know what's happening here. But yeah, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And this, like, you will have to do this is just like first step. Do this every time that you publish a blog post, anything. I always have a disclaimer that is, so that disclaimer. Maybe we can cut through this later.
So the next question that we have is, what are some legal must-haves on someone's site? Like, if you had to boil it down to, like, what is the non-negotiables you need to have these things? What are they?
Okay, so probably the biggest must-have, like the thing that you can really do without, because it's like a legal requirement, pretty much everywhere in the world. Most countries, I would say probably everywhere, but especially in the US or in Europe, in the UK, is a privacy policy. You can't do without one. So privacy policy is a detailed statement that lets your, readers, users, students, everyone needs a privacy policy on their website. Mm-hmm. If you're a website owner, you need a privacy policy. Even if you don't have your own website and you do Etsy or whatever, you still need a privacy policy, okay? Yeah. And must have, this is a statement where you explain to your users the type of information that you gather about them. So you explain how and what you gather, store, handle, process, and release, and how you release the information you collect, and also whether you keep them confidential or you share with third parties. Now, as I've said, this is a must-have because it's probably like in the European Union, there's the GDPR that requires you to have a privacy policy. In the US, there's the California Online Privacy Protection Act and the California Consumer Privacy Act, which both apply in California, but also everywhere else if you have users from California. And if you're online and you're in the US, you will have users from California. So there's COP as well in the US, of a website that serves children aged 13 and below, PIPEDA in Canada, and all the provincial privacy laws that are there, Privacy Act in Australia, I could list. The list goes on. Like, every country has their own regulation about privacy, and it's like a requirement that you can't do without. And if you don't have a privacy policy, you can get fined, you can get sued. So you need to have it. There is no way around it. Then another thing that you must have is the terms and conditions. This is a sort of an agreement, kind of, between you and your user, your readers, or your subscribers, where you basically explain all the rules about dealing with you or your blog or your website. So it can be, how they can use your content, or it can be, a refund policy, a return policy, but also, like, if it's a good terms and condition, it will also include, all those things like those clauses that will protect you legally. So, for example, you will say if there is any dispute, the law that will apply is the one that of your own town or where you're based, so that it's easier for you, or or if you prefer to have an arbitration instead of. So all these clauses that make it easier for you, and you protect yourself legally completely. Now, another thing's probably the one that I mentioned before, the disclaimers. So whenever you publish a blog post, or whenever you give some sort of information, it's good to have some disclaimers in place. So a disclaimer is a statement that allows you to deny or disclaim any liability for the information and advice that you provide. Now, depending on your business you operate, you may need different types of disclaimers. So for example, let's say you blog about health and well-being. You will want to have a disclaimer that says that the information that you're providing is not medical advice and shouldn't substitute seeing a clinician, for example. So like similar to what I did before with about our Q&A today. So people usually tend to think, oh, okay, so disclaimers are only needed if I talk about finance or legal or health and well-being, something where, there are professions like, lawyers or doctors. No, whatever you blog about, it's always good to have a disclaimer, because someone might read, your tips about something, and then they follow your tips and then they get in trouble, and then they come back to you and saying, now, you need to compensate me for what happened to me because I read your blog and I followed your advice. So it's better to have it for a general disclaimer, and then depending on your niche, you can have a specific one. Then there are some disclaimers that actually, so these are for your own protection, and then there are some that are for the protection of others, and there are a requirement, like for example in the US under the Fair Trade Commission guidelines. So let's say, for example, this testimonials, or like I said before, I mentioned how much I make with my blog. So earning disclaimers, for example, these are disclaimers that you need to have in place so that people know that it's not like the general, like it's not that because you buy a course from someone, for example, it's not that because they make $100,000 every month, next week you will make the same. So they need to, So now probably the last must-have that any website should have is a disclosure, because it's another legal requirement. So whenever you do affiliate marketing or whenever you do sponsored posts, you always need to disclaim and disclose the relationship that you have with I like that.
I should have warned you that there might be a cat that joins us.
If you have a financial relationship with a brand or merchants or things that you like, let's say, for example, I have promoted your stuff with my audience, then I'll have to say that actually if they buy through my link, I will receive, and no cost to them, but I will receive a commission from you. You need to disclose that because it's a requirement under the Fair Trade Commission guidelines, but I think it's also like a moral obligation that you have to your audience to be transparent, and so that it's clear that you may have a financial return from that purchase. So I always recommend, even if you're not in the US, even if in your country is not a legal requirement, if you target an international audience, I would still have all the required disclosures to be transparent with your students, customers, readers, to build trust, to meet the same legal standard. As like another thing that so there was a point where I was based in a country that didn't require this. Okay, I still did, but for my audience, but also for my fellow bloggers, because it's unfair when they need to disclose, they must disclose, and other bloggers don't. Then it seems like
Yeah.
So that's another thing that, but I don't know if I'm taking too much time, but every time that you have any interaction with anyone else, so it could be your VA, it could be someone that helps you with the graphics, so a graphic designer, a web developer, anything, or like even your student, always or a partner in your business, always have written agreements, so contracts and things that state the relationship should be
yeah,
am I taking too much? That's cut. I don't want to confuse them.